Hi, this is Mike Filipov from PracticeGuitarNow.com, and in this video I'm going to answer a very common question I receive, which goes like this: how should I practice when I have limited practice time? Before we talk about the specific advice I have for you about how to practice with limited practice time, first you need to get a sense of perspective of what it really means to have your practice time be limited. A young person who lives with his parents and has no real responsibilities and can freely practice 8, 10, 12, 16 hours per day every single day, to that person, limited amount of time may be having 3 or 4 hours to practice per day. Versus someone who's an adult with a family and a job and a lot of real life responsibilities, to that person, having 1 hour of practice per day may be really a lot of time, but having just 20 or 30 minutes may seem like a limited amount of time. So the point behind this is twofold. First, realize that the amount of practice time you have is never going to feel like it's enough. No matter if you have 12 hours to practice or 1 hour to practice, you're always going to wish like you could do more. And second, realize that if you have a lot of time to practice right now, it's not going to stay this way forever. So you must get used to the idea of not having all day to practice, and you must learn how to get the most out of whatever time you do have. Think about any of your favorite guitar players, and I would bet that most of them do not practice guitar anywhere near as much as you think they do. The realities of working in the music business often get in the way of practice time. That's an unfortunate reality of how it is. The next important point about practice time is that you must let go of the myth that says you must practice a certain number of hours to become a good or great guitar player. This is simply not true. The amount of time you practice only becomes important once you understand how to practice effectively and efficiently in general. And until you have that skill set, it doesn't really matter if you practice 16 hours a day, because you're still going to make limited progress even with that huge amount of time. So you need to stop thinking that it is your lack of practice time that's preventing you from getting better as a guitarist. If you aren't making enough progress, then you have a much bigger problem than worrying about your practice time, which is learning how to practice correctly in general to get results. And until you do that, adding more practice time is not going to help you very much. And this leads me to my next point, which is, even though this video is about how to practice with limited practice time, the advice I will give you throughout this video is going to be the same as the suggestions I would give you about how to practice more effectively in general. That is because effective practice is effective practice, no matter if you have 10 hours to practice or 20 minutes to practice. One of my favorite quotes is, "Do what you can with what you have where you are." And the way this applies to practicing is that the same general principles that enable you to practice effectively when you have a lot of time are going to be the same principles that will help you to practice effectively when you have little time as well. So with that in mind, here are the specific points of advice I have for you on how to make your practicing more effective in general and how to get the most of whatever limited amount of time you have to practice. The first point of advice I have for you is to start thinking about your practice time in terms of relative percentages of the overall amount of practice time you have, instead of fixed numbers of hours and minutes. So if you always practice your guitar technique for 25% of your overall practice time, as an example, then it won't matter if you have 4 hours to practice on a particular day or just 1 hour. You know that 25% of that time is going to go to guitar technique. So 25% of 4 hours is 1 hour. So in that case, if you have 4 hours to practice, you would spend 25% or 1 hour of that overall time on guitar technique. And if you have 1 hour to practice, 25% of that is 15 minutes. So you work for 15 minutes on guitar technique and everything still stays in balance. I talk in more details about how to create very effective guitar practice routines that will help you no matter if you have a lot of time to practice or very little in another video that I have on my channel. You can watch it by clicking the link in the annotation. But I wanted to bring up this particular point here because it relates specifically to practicing with limited practice time. The next point of advice is to take advantage of any time during the day when you aren't necessarily busy, but you also cannot physically be with your guitar to practice. You can do a lot during those moments to become a better musician, even if you aren't physically able to play guitar. For example, you can study music theory, you can work on your ear training and practice exercises to develop your ear. And the better you are with music theory and the better you are at ear training, you can also focus on writing music without your instrument. For example, you can write out rhythmic ideas, you can think about chord progressions, you can write melodies all on paper using just pen and paper or your computer even, without needing your guitar to do this. And last but not least, you should be learning how to become more effective at practicing. So this can include studying guitar practice resources, watching guitar practice videos like this video you're watching now, writing out your practice schedules, learning new and effective techniques that will help you to get the most out of the practice time you have with your guitar. On my website, practiceguitarnow.com, there are a lot of resources, articles, and a lot more videos like this one that will help you to get a lot more results from your practice time. You can go to the link in the annotation and study a lot more articles that are written on a variety of topics related to practicing that will all help you to get the most of time you have away from your guitar. Next, when it comes time for you to actually practice your guitar, you need to make sure that you are completely free of any and all distractions. Turn off your phone, turn off your computer, unless you're using it for a very specific purpose related to your practicing. Make sure that no one in your family interrupts you during that time. This is critically important in general to do when you practice, but it is absolutely important when you have limited amount of time to practice, because you need to make every second and every minute count. So make sure you're completely free of all distractions, and that point alone, as simple as it sounds, will make a big difference in terms of helping you get more from your practice time. Next, when you sit down to practice something, you must have a very clear idea and understanding of what exactly you're going to practice, why you're going to practice it, and what you intend to accomplish during that block of practice time. So if you just have 5 minutes to practice a scale, don't just say, I'm going to run through these scale shapes for 5 minutes and hopefully I'll get better at playing those scales. No, come up with a very specific micro goal for that 5-minute block of time. For instance, you may say, I'm only going to focus on my picking hand articulation during this 5 minutes, and focus on refining that and making the articulation as clear and as loud as I can. Or you can focus on the two-hand synchronization aspect of whatever you're practicing, which means focusing on how both hands work together when you play notes. Or you can focus on fretboard visualization, which means taking a single scale pattern and trying to extend it for the entire neck of the guitar, working vertically from the 6th string to the 1st string, working horizontally from the 1st fret all the way up to the last but highest fret on your guitar. And by focusing in this way, you will accomplish a lot more in just a 5-minute block of time than you will just by randomly playing whatever exercise you happen to want to practice in that moment. By the time you're done practicing, even if it was just for 5 minutes, you should still feel like you've taken a forward-moving step in the direction towards your goal. So even if you haven't completely mastered two-hand synchronization with the scale you were working on, you should still feel like you consciously focused on it and you became a little bit better as a result of laser-like focus that you put into that 5 minutes of practice time. And the last tip for this video is to not look for a big uninterrupted block of practice time in your day if you know your time is going to be limited. So don't look for 30 or 60 or 90 minutes of practice time all at once to sit down to practice. That's probably not going to happen if you have a very busy schedule. On the other hand, none of us are busy every single minute of every single hour of every single day. So we all have blocks of time, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 15 minutes here, that we're not really doing anything productive, but that time often gets wasted because you think to yourself, how much can I really accomplish in 5 or 10 or 15 minutes of practicing? The answer? You can get a lot done with just 5 minutes of practice time if you're completely focused, if you have a clear idea of what you need to work on and accomplish, and you really put your entire concentration and focus during that 5 minutes onto practicing. The point is, don't let these small intervals of time, 5, 10, 15 minutes, go to waste just because you assume that you can't get much done in those intervals of time. If you just practice 6 times over the course of a day for 5 minutes, you will have practiced for 30 minutes by the end of the day, which is not too bad if you have a busy lifestyle schedule. So that's it for this video. Apply these points to your practicing and you will really get a lot more out of whatever amount of time you have. And if you have a lot of time to practice in general right now, you should still use these points because they'll help you to get the most results out of every minute of practice time that you have. And you'll become a much better guitar player much faster. If you like this video, make sure to hit the thumbs up button below to like the video. If you're not yet a subscriber to the channel, make sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all my latest videos on how to improve your guitar practicing. The best way to reach me with questions, comments, or requests for future videos is on Facebook, where I'll answer any questions you have. You can also write video requests there, and I will make them in the future to upload on this channel. You can also contact me by email at mike@practiceguitarnow.com. I reply to all emails. So have fun with your practicing, and I'll see you next time.